You're listening to Worshipology with Kurtis Parks, a biblical, practical, and spiritual conversation about living and leading worship. Visit kurtisparks.com to learn more and check out Kurtis's books and latest resources for your worship team. Worshipology is a part of the Worship Leader Magazine podcast network. Worship Leader Magazine has a heart to equip spirit-led worship leaders with practical tools, theological insight, and encouragement for the local church. Today's episode is brought to you by PraiseCharts. Whatever resources you're looking for on the latest songs in today's worship music, PraiseCharts has you ready to go. Whether you need chord charts, lead sheets, or full orchestrations, everything is formatted for your team and available for instant download. Stay current, save time, and lead with confidence. Check out PraiseCharts.com today and get your hands on the freshest songs for Sunday. Now, lean into today's episode of Worshipology with Kurtis Parks.
Well, hey, thanks so much for listening to the Worshipology podcast. This is a biblical, practical, and spiritual conversation all about living and leading worship. And today, I'm pretty pumped. We've been trying to do this podcast for a minute now, but I've got my friend Jay Billington on. Say what's up, Jay.
Hey, how's it going? Happy to finally get the chance to do this.
Well, for those who don't know, Jay Billington, probably one of the most talented musicians I've ever met, plays more instruments than I can count, phenomenal voice, worship leader. He's actually, we met through a mutual friend, Jesse Freeman, up at Lighthouse Church in the Baltimore area, right?
Yeah, that's right. I was following my military career path at the time and landed us in the Baltimore area, got to know Jesse, his wife, that whole community really well. Jesse's doing incredible things there with Lighthouse.
That's awesome, man. So you were doing the military thing. We'll get into that in just a minute. We met in the Nashville, Tennessee area. You would help us out at Bridges Nashville, our church plant. Every now and then we'd get together to just make music and write. We started doing a ton of instrumental projects together, which led to our first ever release. I'm wearing the hat today. I've got to send Jay one because they just came in. But Frontier Sun is a instrumental project designed to really help people just kind of find peace in their life and meditate and pray. And so we're going to jump into all that stuff. But Jay, just for our listeners, man, why don't you kind of share your story? Like, how did you get started in music? And especially like when it comes to just like worship leading and songwriting, how did you get started in all that stuff?
Yeah. So come from a musical family, I didn't really have to learn to sing harmony because it was just like all around me, growing
Nice.
up. My mom and dad both had 7 siblings in the Southern Illinois small town, same small
Wow.
town. And both sides of the family, very musical. So I was always around it. When I got old enough, started picking up a guitar, started playing, then we would have big, musical rounds every get together. And my grandfather, I kind of always called him the musical patriarch of the family. He was a picker from way back. But
Nice.
it's kind of cool when we could get together on certain songs. And I was always surprised that he knew them, when you came to like the Willie Nelson and Johnny Cash, that's kind of where we came together. But man, a rich, just memories, of all of that and definitely foundational to, what became just a lifelong passion for me in music. Wow. I think, so I kind of have different stories on the worship and the songwriting front. On the worship front, it was my first military duty station. I was just up the road from where I am now in Clarksville, Tennessee. And, people found out that I had some musical ability and I found myself being asked to fill in when the worship leader was out. And this was one of those churches that, one night you sit with a whole choir and you teach them, right? So it's like, they threw me into the deep end of the pool. So like one night you had to, and it was a big choir. So I had to, pretend like I knew what I was doing there, leading them. And then the next night it was the worship band. And then, Sunday morning it all came together. And so, my wife, Kit, and I were kind of in, away from both of our families. And we had kind of a second family in Earl and Karen Snyder And so, oh, by the way, during that whole process, it's funny how, when you're following, the Lord's obedience, things tend to try to stop you. But like, I remember the night or the day, I had gotten off work at the military post and I was supposed to race to the church. And for some reason I pulled in too early to my driveway and busted the back tire of my car. And so I barely made it, I had, but it all works out. Especially when you give it to God. And I just remember Earl and I, after that Sunday that I led, we drove to Cracker Barrel together. And
nice.
We were just talking, he's kind of a mentor type. And he said, Jay, you're going to go a lot of different places, but this is always going to be something that you do, and he's talking about worship leading. And so he was kind of speaking into me and over me on that. So I felt honored by just that moment and those words. And sure enough, he was right. Just found the Lord using me, calling me in different ways at most of the places that we moved to. Lighthouse was one of those in the Baltimore area. I ended up filling in as the interim worship leader at our church in Brooklyn when we lived there for quite a few years. And here in Nashville area, I'm kind of the relief pitcher, if you will, for for several, because I really have a heart for worship leaders, to be honest. And
that's cool.
And because I know what that is about. I know what that takes. I don't necessarily have the desire to be the guy, but I really have a heart for those that are out there and doing it. And to me, that means I can fill in for them, when they need to take a knee on a Sunday, they've got plans, because that's important, right? Having that balance. It is a task. It is a tasking task at times. That's kind of where I'm at now.
Wow.
On the songwriting front, that kind of, I picked up a guitar and started tinkering around when I was about 15. And my first song that I wrote was this super cheesy song called Miss Someone, right? About
nice.
who the person was that I was going to officially, finally marry. And my family sure seemed to dig it, and that's all that mattered at the time. But
nice.
As I went and followed my career path in the military, I always got opportunities to share a little part of your heart. There's so much heart that goes into the process. And I think probably one of the most impactful moments for me is, so I spent about 10 years of my 20-year Army career as a helicopter pilot. And I was serving.
I'm learning stuff about you I didn't know, man. How did I not know that? That's so cool.
No excuse.
You just got way cooler in my eyes. Helicopter pilot?
Let's see. What else can I think of? I'm probably much cooler. No, definitely.
Well, thank you for your service, by the way, because that's my whole family is military, and it is a sacrifice, and we appreciate what you do, man. And I was going to ask you too, like with the military side of it, did you get to showcase your musical ability, or was it kind of more like, no, that was two separate worlds for you? What did that look like, Jay?
Well, I mean, first of all, I was honored to serve. It was my pleasure. And honestly, when you talk about sacrifice, that's something that the whole family partakes in, right?
No doubt.
Because you pick up and you move every 2 to 3 years. And sometimes, that's exciting. And sometimes that's like, wait a second, I like these people around me, So the whole, and then, being gone for years at a time, away from your own family. Right. That's hard. And that's a sacrifice on both ends. So man, I got a lot of respect for those that continue to do that and continue to serve. I did get a chance to, just kind of follow that songwriting passion and just see how music influences people and gets at them at a deep level that maybe other things can't. So I was serving as a leader within our aviation battalion. We were a training battalion in Lower Alabama. And alongside me, our safety officer had been a Vietnam, believe it or not, helicopter pilot in that same unit, right? And this this is in like 2005, right? He's still serving. He had served in Vietnam, had flown Huey helicopters. And the cool thing was every 2 years we'd get together. We would have the Vietnam veterans come and join us. And then the new soldiers we'd have a banquet. We'd have, hangouts.
Yeah.
They started giving people like helicopter rides, which was really cool.
Oh, that's cool.
But he floated me like a bunch of pictures of their unit in Vietnam and said, hey, can you like put these together? That technical stuff. Can you put these together for the banquet? I want to kind of show a slideshow. So I'm sitting on my back porch the night before that banquet. And I'm like, man, I really want a heartfelt way to communicate to these guys. First of all, thank you for serving. But second of all, the more I learned about the Vietnam experience, the more I realized they did not get a good welcome home. In fact, stories upon stories of being spit on. Recently I heard of a guy that had to change in the airport because of how much like hate, he was getting upon landing. Man, what a betrayal of that service. And so
sad.
So that night I just, plucked through a tune and ended up writing a song. It's called The Eagle Cried, and just has that sentiment of, telling that Vietnam story, Vietnam service member story. And the response I got, Kurtis, like these guys, grizzled, grizzled veterans with some age on them, and a lot of them were in tears. A lot of them, it hit them at a level I wasn't prepared for. And, it just shows me the power of music, right? The power of a story, of a message within, a few chords and a melody, right? It can get people and maybe speak to them, like I said, in ways that other things can't. So,
wow. I remember when you and I first got together in the Nashville area and you were telling me about that song and, just the fact that you're right. There's so many stories behind the songs that we sing, even the worship songs that we sing. I'm thinking of How He Loves by John Mark McMillan, who wrote it for a friend that died. And, just to be reminded of God's love, I'm thinking about Reckless Love by Corey Asbury. All these songs have epic stories behind, and there's something about the artistry and the storytelling element of songwriting. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about your progression in music, from writing that song. Where did you go next? And then take us up to speed of where you are today, man.
Yeah, so, it was kind of just a personal, private thing for a long time. I think, that experience made me realize that maybe I shouldn't keep all of these tunes to myself, or to my immediate family. And so as I was in Brooklyn, I found a couple of guys that were just like ride or die type guys. Nice. And we started, hanging out, and they realized I had kind of this, these songs that I was just hanging on to, playing in the privacy of my home. And they just dove in, man, and said, wow, we love this. We want to be a part of this. And so
that's cool.
Put together an album, and one of the guys, a good friend of mine, Butch, produced that. Now I still have not put that album out. And that's a different story we can share at a different time, but reminded me, as that stuff was coming together, there was all these temptations, and I think I followed a lot of them to think, okay, this is cool because of where it may go, right? This is cool because this means something because of what might be happening as a result of it.
Wow.
And now that I am years beyond that experience, I realized that the magic was right there. It was that community, those guys, and we added a couple more. We had an amazing weekend in the Poconos where we rented a house and we just worked out the tunes and just hung out and ate pizza and man, those will be treasured memories that I'll have for forever. And so to me, it's I don't have a lot of musical ambition, but when I can marry the concepts of of music and community together, I'm all in. That's just
Wow.
what I love. And I'm grateful to have people like yourself, honestly, that have been a part of that story for me.
Man, that's so cool. I think this is exactly what a lot of our listeners need to hear, because we live in an age, the social media era, the era where worship leaders are now celebrities, the era where, you're writing a song and it's like, well, why are you writing this? Well, I want to get on the CCLI Top 100. It's like, you're not just writing it because the Lord gave you something. I think there's something to what you're saying, Jay, even though you're sharing this on the more singer-songwriter side and not necessarily the worship leader side. There's something beautiful and pure and honest about, hey, if this never goes anywhere, it was about the experience that I had. I think there's so many times where, like, and this might be strong language, but like, we take a special moment with the Lord and we try to pimp it out, of like, that was a beautiful moment with God. And what can I do to turn this into a song that could reach millions and go out there and make me famous? And talk to us a little bit about that, because one thing I love about you and one thing I love about making music with you is that it's a blast. And we have this synergy, and, we did this 13 song record. You're in Tennessee, I'm in Virginia. We would go back and forth on ideas. Some of the songs you started, some of the songs I started, but we'd always just like find the right parts. And it was like looking back on these 13 instrumental songs and now hearing people like, I ran into a couple guys this week that were like, man, I was just listening to your album and I really connected with the Lord this morning on my drive in. I was angry and now I'm like at peace. And I was like, man, that's kind of what the whole thing was for. But it was even the beauty in the making, like the process of that. Like, talk to us a little bit about that, and how can somebody who's maybe made music, made worship, other than that, how can they get back to that really simple place, Jay?
Yeah, well, I mean, first of all, that is no foreign temptation to me, right? I mean, I think that is, we think of, we're dreamers, right? We're creative types. And so we're automatically going to think, this could be something big, right? And at some level, there's nothing wrong with that, right? I think God has planted those desires in our heart to just, to honor him. I do think we have to check them at times and see what is the intent behind it.
Wow.
So to me, it's just like, can you open your hands enough to say, God, I'm thankful for this moment.
Wow.
Where I recorded this, where I wrote this because I felt inspired by your leading. Are you satisfied with that? Or are you not satisfied until it reaches some, milestone or marker that you have set? And I think, that will kind of unmask the intent. I'll tell you, Kurtis, like when I had no idea how difficult my transition from the military would be, right? I was like, I was pretty satisfied. I didn't miss the military after I left, but finding relevance outside of that world that had been my world for 20 years was really tricky. And so I plopped into the Nashville market in a time where, first of all, on the musical front, I had this new EP I was kind of excited about. On the job front, I had done some cool things in the Army, and I just knew that was going to go somewhere. And God took me through one of the most cherished seasons of despair that I've ever gone through. And it loosened all those expectations. It got rid of those intentions. It took me 13 months and 3 days to get my first job offer in that season.
I remember.
And I faced rejection. On the musical front, I faced rejection on the job front. And God just used that to number one, get rid of those intentions that were not honoring to him. And the way that I kind of climbed out of that, as you're part of that story, is I felt the Holy Spirit telling me one day, stop what you're doing, stop this striving for a job, for musical success, whatever it may be, and just wherever you see me at work, serve me there. And so I started asking people all around me, how can I serve you? You were subject to part of that. And
I have to pause you there, because it wasn't like something light. You helped me put up a retaining wall for 2 days, blood, sweat, and tears. And it was fun, but man, we got our workout on, dude.
Would we do it again is the question. Like, we had no idea.
we would have no desire to ever do that kind of manual labor again. But man, that's beautiful, man. Just serve God wherever he puts in front of you.
Yeah. And it was so freeing to realize that I didn't have to have those ambitions that were weighing me down. I didn't have to keep striving for this concept that I might have built up in my head about what success looks like. And you know what? Through that time, I got closer to wonderful people. I got to serve the Lord without pretense. I got, and by the way, I did get the job offer shortly thereafter, which is
nice.
Just part of the story, right? But part of it was just, I think, him teaching me, look, I got this. Don't put your own spin on this. Let me do what I do.
That's amazing, man. When we take our hands off a situation and let God put his hands on our life, things tend to go a little bit better that way. I want to talk to you a little bit about this record that we just did together, because it's weird if I just talk about it myself, but when I've got a partner in crime, it's less weird.
Your hat's speaking volumes, by the way.
I know, man. Well,
you don't have
your
to say
design.
much.
Your design, man, and I've already got people asking for it. But this is kind of birthed out of you and I just, I think we probably put together 30 instrumental tracks that have been used on TV and a little bit of micro sync out there in the different commercial world spaces. But we just kind of started to put my acoustic and piano together with the 300 instruments that you play. And just to clarify a little bit, I mean, you play dobro, banjo, mandolin, lap steel, acoustic guitar, you sing. Anything else that I'm missing here?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't play anything well, but I play it well enough, right, to get by. So
you're too humble, man. No, you're phenomenal, man. And I've shown some Grammy-winning producers your stuff, and they're like, man, this guy is the real deal. So you definitely bring excellence to it. We started doing these instrumentals, and we would pitch these songs to these different things online, and the ones that usually got rejected were the ones that we would be like, hey, we like these. And so some of the record from Frontier Sun is kind of like reworks of songs that didn't land with what we were pitching to, but a lot of it kind of just started from ideas and scratch tracks and this and that from across 2 different states. I did want to ask you, what is instrumental music to you? And then how did you kind of get started in all of these? I mean, I know you started on guitar when you were a teenager, but how did you branch out to dobro and mandolin and banjo and lap steel and on and on? What inspired all of that? So that's a 2-part question. What does instrumental music mean to you? And then how'd you kind of get started on all these aux instruments?
Yeah. I mean, you telling that story of kind of somebody who was using it, as they were praying or something like that. It's got such, I think, opportunity there that I think is kind of cool. To me, if I'm working, right, I can't listen to a bunch of, I'm a musical guy, so I don't want to work in complete silence. That's like a tune to me, right? So, but yet I can't listen to stuff that's lyrically heavy because it'll distract me. I'm a fairly simple guy. Can't do 2 things at once, So I think the instrumental, it can kind of be the undercurrent of things that we're doing in our life. I have my own story. A coworker of mine, they were having some challenges with his daughter just being, calming down at the end of the day, doing her homework and everything. And they started playing the album, and now she's got to have that every night. It calms her in some way. So I think, what a pleasure to be a part of that and to not worry about what is the lyrical story of this.
Yeah.
It's just, you're building the lyrical story, if you will, instrumentally, mm-hmm. and that's a whole different element. So it was a lot of fun to put together just to, work through those ebbs and flows of the song. I think, when it came to picking up a different instrument here and there, I think I was really following that path of community. I think one of my favorite stories in that is the reason I picked up the dobro is because I got this fairly cheap Fender. It's actually a round neck resonator. So this is a guitar that you could play, typically like blues slide type thing.
Yeah.
but my grandpa had put an attachment on the nut to raise the strings, and so it was modified to be a square neck, so you play it on your lap.
Yeah.
And he had given me that, and he ended up. We learned that he was kind of in his last days or day, and I got a call. I was serving down in Alabama at the time, and I got a call from my dad. He's like, "You need to come now,
wow,
and see Grandpa." And so, man, we drove as fast as we could all night. We get there early the next morning, and that entire day, there were no less than 15 people in his hospital room. We're playing music. At one point, my aunt said that he kind of stuck up his hand as if he wanted to join in, because that's what he would have done.
I love it.
So he passed away, that day. And so we all kind of gathered. I think it was that same night, to be honest, wow. at my grandma and his home. And I was tinkering around on that, modified dobro. And a bunch of my aunts, a bunch of my cousins, uncles came around. We ended up writing a song. And these are not songwriters, right? Wow. We ended up writing a song honoring his life, wow. Played it with a bunch of my cousins at the funeral, and I was playing his dobro,
Wow.
So, just speaks to the richness of that community that you build through music. And when that's in your own family, what a blessing. So beyond that, I picked up stuff because people needed stuff. Like I think the pedal steel was because Kurtis was like, "Hey, what about?"
I remember I was doing a country record and I was like, "Man, I really want some pedal steel on this one song." And you're like, "Well, I've got one here. I might as well start tinkering around with it." And then within a week, you sent me this baller track that ends up on this country record with a band called 60 Miles South. And I was just like, "What can't you play, man? Like the banjo, mando."
But what I love though about how you approach things is like, you don't wait until people are ready. You're just like, "Hey, give me something."
You can figure it out.
Yeah, go for it, right? I think.
Oh my gosh,
that's awesome. So that keeps me on my toes. And if I'm sure there's another instrument out there that I'll try to be barely passable on and sneak on some kind of song somewhere.
Oh my gosh, no, it's definitely been a fun journey, and I think when you're talking about in the moment and making music just because it's so fun. That's what I've loved about the Frontier Sun project is that, hopefully a lot of people listen to it. And, as people kind of find their different worlds of peace as they listen to these songs and they're able to connect with God, they're able to connect with, even just nature, like walking around. And I put the album, it's a great driving album. Like if I'm driving through the mountains here in Virginia, and yes, I do listen to our own project. Like, it's like, that's weird. I'm like,
is that uncool? I don't know.
I don't know. But my daughter was like, "Dad, why are you listening to your music?" And here's what I told her, Jay, no joke. I said, well, part of the reason I made this was for me. Like, I love to just put this on and there's something about instrumental music. I love that you said you don't have to be distracted by the lyrics behind it. And that's why I love instrumental music. People are asking me all the time as a worship leader, hey, what are the worship artists you're listening to? Full disclosure, I don't listen to a whole ton of worship music because the way that I connect with God is usually on a prayer walk with an instrumental record and just talking to him and listening to him.
Amen to that.
And I think there's something really cool about instrumental albums. You're seeing more of it come out. I'm glad that we could add our small stream to the river of instrumental music that's coming out. And talk to us a little bit about that, Jay. Like, how can instrumental music help people connect with God and be something that, just in their daily life, part of what they're doing, like, the undercurrent, as you called it, how does that really help people be more intentional with their walk with God?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think of, the Bible talks about how our walk is supposed to be this continual thing, pray without ceasing, in everything, give thanks. Right. And what are we doing all day long? I mean, most of us, we're listening to something, right?
Wow.
So that all matters, what we're putting in to the tank, if you will. And I think, to be able to choose what that is, to be able to kind of make that things that do honor the Lord. And our, our record was, that's part of the intention, man, because that's part of who we are, right? And so that's all baked into that desire to honor our Creator. So, I mean, I think that's part of the goodness of it is whatever you're doing, you can instrumentals, right? You can kind of be part of the soundtrack of what you do and your life.
I think what's really cool is that you sometimes wouldn't realize the amount of emotion that comes with just an instrumental record. I had a worship leader friend up in McLean, Virginia, reach out the day the album came out. And one of the songs on there is called Pressing Through. And it's really emotional. The dobro at the end is probably my favorite part on the album. And you just did this little, you just kind of like did this little slide down it. It literally feels like it's tugging on heartstrings when you hear that. And so part of even like, some of the titles that we came up with were just inspired by the way it made you feel. It's like, this is, I just feel like this song makes me feel like I'm pressing through in a hard season. It's like the emotion that you can kind of feel. I remember we brought you up to our church here in Richmond area, Destination Church. We brought you up here for a Good Friday service. And still to this day, Jay, one of my favorite services in the 3.5 years I've been here, you played the dobro. It was kind of stripped down. We had cello and acoustic and a small drum kit. And there's just something about that particular instrument. It's my favorite, dobro, right up there with cello. And what is it about like some of these instruments that are kind of fringe instruments and maybe in a worship world? Like, you got artists like Wren Collective that would throw in a lot of mandolin and banjo, of course on the larger scene, Mumford & Sons, but what is it about these specific instruments that's just like, there's nothing like it,
Right. Well, first of all, I want everyone to know that the sounds he makes, that's exactly what comes into my text messages when he's trying to give me pointers for what
You're
he
supposed
wants
to keep that a
sound.
secret.
This is my favorite ones.
We're gonna post some of those voice texts.
Yeah, I keep all of those. No, I think to me the dobro is so unique. And I think something that the dobro and the pedal steel kind of share is they're filling these spaces. And it's all emotion, right? There's the slides that you get, the resolution that you get on the pedal. It's kind of filling those spaces, but it's also, I mean, it's kind of like that groan, that whine, right? That sometimes in our worst moments, right? Like that's all we got, to me, it's just, it's an emotion. They're both emotional instruments. And I think that ends up coming through in the way they're used in songs. You kind of have to, you got to manage it, right?
Yeah.
Because no one wants to hear a wail for 3.5 minutes.
Whale noises for 4 minutes long.
Yeah.
I think that was in some 70s music. I don't know. Pink Floyd probably can attribute to the success of whale noises. But dude, Jay, excited for people to hear this. And I mean, we're just getting started with Frontier Son. We're going to put a link to the debut album in our show notes, as well as how to connect with Jay. Bro, so much fun talking with you. One more question for you. What is the Holy Spirit speaking to you right now in your prayer life? What have you just felt like the Lord just been whispering to you lately?
I think for me, I gotta give you one more story, right?
Come on.
So I'm following what I think the Holy Spirit is leading me to in, just being intentional with the worship songs, with the moments, with kind of shepherding as best you can, a congregation pointing others to Christ. In those congregational moments. And I was in like this season where I really felt like, man, I want to lean into some of these things I think the Lord is telling me. And so I was lockstep deliberate in how I planned that particular service out. And I made sure, everything, we were prayerful about it and everything was in there. And so this particular church, there were 3 services. And I remember standing on that platform at the end of the last service and watching people go out. And I was probably feeling kind of, pleased with myself. I had been obedient to the call and all this stuff. And the Holy Spirit gave me 2 words, and I knew exactly what he meant. And it's kind of funny to think about it now, but those 2 words were, so what? I was like, but I knew what that meant, Kurtis. It meant the Lord had been calling me to far deeper things than that. You know, how am I discipling within my family? How am I representing him in evangelism? What are the deeper things? And let's listen to that voice. I mean, nothing wrong with what I had done, with the obedience that I had shown, but it was a morsel. And he wanted to show me the whole meal, you know? I mean, you know, C.S. Lewis talks about this in his essay, The Weight of Glory, how we're just so easily satisfied, man. And this is a process for me. So if I could tell you that I stepped right in and I followed immediately, I'm not fully there, but he's calling us deeper. He's calling us further on this journey. And man, may we not be too easily satisfied for just the morsel when he's got a whole feast in front of us.
Dude, that's a sermon right there, all to itself, man. I think I literally just read that book last year, and that excerpt about, what is it, like we settle for mud cakes when he's got a whole feast at the table for us. That's so good. Like, don't settle for less when he's got so much more for you. Jay, bro, I'm going to be living with that for a minute, man. Thanks so much for spending some time with us on Worshipology, dude.
Appreciate you, brother. This was fun. Thanks.
You've been listening to Worshipology with Kurtis Parks. Visit kurtisparks.com to learn more and check out Kurtis's books and resources for worship leaders and teams. Worshipology is part of the Worship Leader Magazine podcast network, brought to you by Worship Leader Magazine. Today's episode was sponsored by PraiseCharts. Visit PraiseCharts.com and get everything you need for your worship team today.